All right, here's the deal. Not all backpacking tents are created equal, and there are some important things to consider when it comes to choosing the right tent for your backpacking needs. Today I want to talk about 3 big problems that backpacking tents tend to have that are important considerations for you when choosing the right tent for you for your backpacking needs. I've got a non-freestanding tent, a semi-freestanding tent, and a full freestanding tent that are going to be used as examples to talk about these 3 big problems that backpacking tents have. The first big problem that I want to talk about is the fact that a tent design might not be the best design for your sleep system that you've invested in. This is the Outdoor Vitals 40th one-person tent. I love this tent. It is a non-freestanding tent, which means that you've got much steeper sidewalls in this A-frame design, which means that when I'm in here in the tent, my face is a lot closer to the sidewall of the tent than maybe other options like the Tiger Wall UL1 that we'll talk about here in a second. But what I'm working with is a 4-inch Rapide SL pad from Big Agnes, and then I've got my Western Mountaineering ultralight sleeping bag. And with that 4 inches of height, when you've got a trekking pole tent like this, it does bring your face a lot closer to the side wall of the tent, which will potentially increase condensation buildup inside of the tent and maybe not allow for as much airflow, and around your face is going to get very wet because you're releasing hot air from your body. It's colder outside, that's mixing, creating condensation. And so your sleep system needs to kind of match the way that the tent is designed to help you get the best performance and experience possible. Now, is this a nitpicky thing? Yeah, actually, all of these problems are pretty nitpicky and things that there's ways and workarounds and solutions to all of these things. And maybe it's just the fact that I use this guy out to be able to pull this tent wall away a little bit further. I put a stick underneath to create a bit more height, and that makes it so that the tent wall is not so close to my face. But in other situations where I might be using a 2-person tent, in fact, let's jump over to a 2-person tent and talk about it. So this tent is the Telos TR2 from Sea to Summit. This is a phenomenal backpacking tent, freestanding tent that's going to have incredible weather performance. I love this tent. But when we're talking about tent design, let's consider what this tent is dimension-wise and how it would affect 2 people using this tent when you are using specifically 25-inch wide pads. And my opinion is that the industry is moving toward more people using and buying 25-inch wide pads. And tent manufacturers, they are going to need to be building more tents in the 2-person size that fit 25-inch wide pads better than what you get out of here. Now, here at the head end of the tent, I've got plenty of space, about 52 inches or so of width at the head end, that then drops to 42 inches at the foot end. That is not a design that warrants the ability for 2 people to have 2 25-inch wide pads to fit inside of this tent. And so I feel like you've got to make decisions in your purchasing that allow for the product to do what you need design-wise, that also accommodates all of the other gear items that you're going to be using. Now, the benefit of this product is you've got plenty of height on the head end, the foot end. You don't have to worry so much of the tall aspect of the walls that are coming in steeply to your face and such, so that's not a concern. It's simply the width of the tent at the foot end that doesn't accommodate those 2 25-inch wide pads. Big problem number 2 the backpacking tents have is a tent design may lack features that allow for optimal weather performance of that particular design. Let's use this Tiger Wall UL1 as an example. This is a semi-freestanding tent that is also made out of nylon materials. Now, this is semi-freestanding, meaning that potentially in heavy winds, rain and such, this may not be the most structurally sound option for high alpine situations. Maybe you've got some snow load, maybe you've got just heavy rain and stuff that's coming down that makes this maybe not the best option for what you're looking for out of a tent. And the Telos may be a better option, or a like a pyramid style trekking pole tent could be the better option out of all three for you to get the optimal weather performance. Now, the issue that I have with the Tiger Wall as a heavy extreme weather type of shelter is this thing will collapse, and it's so lightweight, it's so minimal in its structure that if you don't take the time to set this up correctly, things are going to move around. It's not going to perform the way that it absolutely needs to. And what's funny about this is I was on a trip in Canyonlands National Park with Dan Becker, Bryce Newbold, Amy Rout, and Huck from Huck Outdoors. And that tent that Dan Becker was using, which was a Tiger Wall UL2, that thing was like flattened out on top of Dan in the middle of the night. It was so funny to see him kind of work around that in a sandy situation. And it just goes to show that in heavy winds and rains and such, you need a tent that is going to perform the best possible for those situations. Now, is that to say that this is not a good shelter or you shouldn't consider it? Absolutely not. I love this Tiger Wall. I took this out last weekend and had a great experience with this in some pretty cold temperatures. And what was nice about it is because of the living space inside of the tent, I was able to enjoy not getting wet from condensation because of the double walled design that the tent provides, and the really steep wall that's here that makes it so that I, again, don't have that in my face. But specifically, this tent has an issue, and it's the fact that down here at the tie-off points and the stakeout points, you don't have adjustment that allows you to adjust the tension of the tent, especially with this being a nylon shelter. This thing is going to soak up a bit more water than a polyester or Dyneema fabric, and because of that, it's going to sag, and you could have the sidewall of the tent lay against the inner tent and then transfer water and moisture into the inside of the tent. That's something that I really wish that a lot of these ultralight type of tents would get away from, and is give me some kind of tension ability to adjust the tension over time as it rains, as it dries out and everything, to make sure I'm getting the best performance out of the tent. So my recommendation is, when you are looking for a new tent for you to add to your backpacking gear loadout, get on YouTube, look for reviews and set up videos and everything that you can find about that tent so that you are able to see the feature aspects that allow you to make a better educated decision on whether or not that is the best product for you, and it's going to provide what you need out of that shelter to have the best weather performance possible for your backpacking trips. The third big problem that backpacking tents have is a sacrifice of living space in order to save as much weight as possible in the tent design. And in the case of this Tiger Wall, it does pretty good. It hits a fairly middle ground aspect of having enough living space for a one-person tent to not make it feel super crammed and everything. But I've been in some one-person tents that have just, why it was ever made is a serious question that I have, because when you sit up in the tent and you move around and you're trying to enjoy yourself in that shelter, you want something that is going to provide the ability for you to move around, get changed, and not feel super claustrophobic. Now, I know there are some tent designs that they are very intentionally made to be as small as possible for a small footprint, for weather performance, for other aspects that make it more niche to those specific needs that that tent is able to provide, or that bivvy is able to provide. But in general, I want a shelter to be livable. If I have to sit out a rainstorm, if I have to sit out any kind of weather event, I don't want to feel like I can't sit up, I can't move around. and that I'm just basically in a coffin. And so I want a shelter that even in a one-person setting, I want it to have the most livable space possible. So when I am choosing and looking for a backpacking tent, those are things that I definitely consider. And in the event of applying all three of these problems together, sometimes there's some give and take. Maybe one of these things will work out a lot better and you're sacrificing on the other. And for this tiger wall, for example, I'm getting living space out of the tent because I've got enough space to move around, but I'm also sacrificing where my sleep system, in this case, is taking up quite a bit of room of the tent. And maybe I have to push more gear outside of the tent than I would if I was in the telos, where I can put as much gear and everything inside of the tent and nothing in the vestibule if I'm just using that as a solo shelter. So at the end of the day, do your research. Spend the time researching as many different products that fit within those check boxes of needs and wants that you have for a backpacking tent. Each of these shelters behind me that we've talked about today, they're going to serve different purposes. Maybe this 40th from Outdoor Vitals is going to be the lightest weight option possible and have the smallest footprint, but it could also be the most cumbersome depending on what type of terrain that I am setting up on. And so maybe the Tiger Wall or the Telos are better options in that aspect, where I can set up on different types of terrain, not have to worry so much about that. And I am only increasing my weight by a small amount by doing that. Take the time, research, figure out exactly what you need out of a backpacking tent, and try to avoid these three big problems that you find in backpacking tents, and find the solution for those problems that allows you to find the right product that gives you the solution for what you need when you head out on your backpacking trips. I want to thank you guys for watching today. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you know what to do. Hope you have an awesome day. We'll see you later.